People often complain that like is just a filler, and that's really not right. There are several problems. First of all, filler isn't really a technical term, which makes it difficult to even know what we are talking about. Let's say filler means a noise that a speaker makes when they're not sure what to say next, they just need a moment. Well, so a couple of things about that. If we're thinking of like or some other sound as a noise only for the purpose of buying a little time to think of the right word, well, first of all, what would be so terrible about that? Think about the complexity of communication situations. Sometimes you come into them very tired. The information you need to convey could be very complicated, or it could be potentially uh, unwelcome for the other person to hear, and you're trying to how to not hurt their feelings, or just you're trying to be organized and everything is just complicated. Just stringing a sentence together, even in the best of situations, is just a much more difficult thing than you imagine. It takes a lot of computation in the mind. So if one of us does need a moment to just figure out what's the right word to say next, what's the direction in which I should take this sentence, then that's life. I guess it would be nice if every time that we go to say something, a full formed, wonderful verbal essay fell out of our mouths, but that is just not going to happen. Situations are difficult and sometimes you need a moment. And so, if that happens, if you need a moment, it's more practical to let the other person know. For example, by saying, if you need a moment and you just stop talking, they're going to think, oh, my turn now. I guess you are not interested in saying more. So that wouldn't really be a good idea. Um, or some other noise for signaling that you need a moment is practical. Now, it is true, maybe some people use like in this way occasionally. But really, for most instances of like that you run into, if somebody claims that the only reason any time like is used is just to buy a little time to know what to say next, that would be false. And we can tell for two reasons. One is very often when you're listening to someone who is a real like user, one of those people who drop two or three likes per sentence, or maybe even six of them, well, typically that person is speaking fast the whole time. They keep up that fast rate while using like. So that's just not consistent with the idea that they are struggling to know what to say next. They're speaking fast and often saying complex things with a pretty wide vocabulary. And the other thing is, like isn't meaningless. It does have meaning. Now, it doesn't have referential meaning, which tends to be the one that people are aware of and kind of care about a lot. So, meaning about who did what to whom and what was involved and where it was and for how long. Well, no, like doesn't have those meanings, but it has other types of meaning. It can, in some cases, mark which part of the message is new information. That is an important function. It can signal how ideas in discourse fit together, in the same way as therefore, which is a word that everybody respects a lot. Like and therefore are similar in the kind of work they do in discourse. Or like can also convey social information about how close people are. Hey, I'm this kind of person, so you should like me. That stuff is important. So this idea that like is meaningless is just false. It is a false claim. So please do not call like a filler. The exception would be, and I think this is a rare case, when you know that a speaker was having trouble thinking of a word and they used like for this purpose. Most of the time, we can tell that there is some other more specific function for like, and it's just not true to call it a filler.